Another blow for government with the North Gauteng High Court ruling that patients may not be forced into state quarantine. And of course, the other big story coming to us just yesterday from the state capture inquiry, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo confirming that the inquiry is in fact ready to resume under level 3 of the lockdown. Let's unpack these issues now with Professor Lesiba Teffo, who is a political analyst and joins us now via Skype. Professor, thanks very much for your time. Before we get to the stories unfolding in the country's courts over the past week, let's talk about the state capture inquiry and Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo saying that it's ready to resume, and actually in particular it wants to get some feedback. It wants to really drill down into Parliament and its oversight role during the worst years of state capture when the looting was happening. This is a big one.
Yes, indeed. Subsumed in that statement is the fact that Parliament failed in its duty to hold the executive accountable. But one has to be careful about also how one frames the statement, because there were attempts from within Parliament, but by those that might have seemed to be anti the ruling party, who said things are not well in the state of Denmark. There is massive looting, massive mismanagement or undermanagement of state resources, but they were not listened to. And by the way, the separation of powers is about holding each other accountable in order to ensure efficiency, effectiveness, and prudent use of the fiscus.
So, Professor, when we think about, bringing Parliament before the State Capture Commission of Inquiry and interrogating the issue of oversight during state capture, who in particular stands out for you in who has the biggest case to answer here?
Look, it's too easy to name the name of Jacob Zuma. But he would not have succeeded had the ruling party ensured that the right things were being done. Right? And already, a minute ago, one of your old colleagues read from the papers that suggests to me that not long we'll be having a state inquiry into COVID-19 resources. It is that makes one feel like this country is not headed anywhere with the caliber of leaders that we have. Because he was defended, he was abetted and aided by some of his comrades within Parliament and in state-owned enterprises. Indeed, even some of the leagues of the ruling party, even some of the professionals were all out to defend the wrong that is going on. And you say, as a people, as a country, how far can we go unless and until we hold each other accountable and responsible, especially to the wretched of the earth?
So, Prof, you talk about those who very vocally defended the former President Jacob Zuma. What about those who, in their silence, were as complicit?
Oh, yes. Yes. There is acquiescence, right? Remember, evil thrives in the main when good men keep quiet. When people like you and me keep quiet in the face of the looting of state resources. But we have limited capacity to influence things. State institutions, state capacity, institutional capacity is what the founding fathers of our society ensured that are there and help ensure that people are put in the narrow and the straight. But unfortunately, you would know, we had people like the public protector who tried the best they could. We had others in similar positions who ensured that things should not happen as they should. And state prosecution, how far did it go? It didn't go far enough. We had judges, some of them went beyond the call of duty to ensure that the state is run the appropriate way. It was not all gloom and doom. There were men and women who, some of them, by the way, were kicked out of their jobs, were fired, were suspended. Their marriages were collapsed. in an attempt to ensure South Africa was run the right way. It is those people that I think maybe one day the president or some of us would say, can we have a fund to help those whose lives were destroyed when they were trying to help the South Africa run the proper way?
So, Prof, I think it was really good to hear from the chairperson of the State Capture Inquiry yesterday, because so much of not only the work of that inquiry, but so much else has had to go on pause through the COVID-19 pandemic. They've got a very short time left to conclude what really is a massive amount of work. Are you still of the view that the State Capture Inquiry will ultimately be able to do what it was aimed to do, what it was aimed to achieve?
Even if it stopped after 6 months, for me it had already achieved a lot. It can only do so much enough. The state of rot went far too deep, close to the marrow. And why I'm saying it achieved a lot is because I'm saying at a psychological level, there were men and women who perhaps intended to steal like me, who, because of what is going on, the fear of the Lord was sent to them. That's number one. Number two, there was money already recovered or recouped in the process. Number three, there are men and women willing, given the political space that says you are covered, you have my backing, you can be a whistleblower without any fear or victimization. Those 4 points for me already says, even if we are to stop now and sustain, right, that atmosphere, we have gone a long way, when we would go a long way.
Prof, I just need to ask you one question before we run out of time, and we need to touch on what's happened in the country's courts over the past weeks with regard to rulings against the regulations the government have put in place for COVID-19. Is this a blow to government, or is it something that we take in our stride, given that this is uncharted waters, not only for us, but for countries around the world?
What is the question?
What's unfolded in the courts this week, the two decisions against government, the one issue around you can't be forced to quarantine, the other issue around the constitutionality and invalidity of level 3 and level 4 of the lockdown. You reckon these are big blows to government?
Not quite. Remember, the court are also assisting the government to do the right things. Remember, we have got 3 arms of the state: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. All of them are there to help each other comfortable to do the right thing. But I hear people put more emphasis on the decision of yesterday that you can't force people to be quarantined. There was a decision in the High Court in Limpopo 2 months ago to the same effect, where 2 medical doctors were forced to be quarantined, right? And you say, they said, we have the capacity, we have the space in our own homes where we can quarantine ourselves. And we can look after ourselves, given the medical knowledge and the experience and the resources we have. That decision set a precedent for me, and it tells you sometimes maybe we go overboard in the implementation of the regulations. That's the first bit. The second one, that's the second one, of course, is about the regulation by Judge Norman Davis. Right? I wouldn't say it's a bad one or a good one, but what one cannot deny is the fact that there are regulations that really could not pass muster. There are regulations that were pronounced on by either Manuel, by either Tito Mboweni, or by either layman or so on. But he crystallized it in legalese and also by virtue of the court saying, go out there and correct where necessary. But he didn't say the lockdown was irrational. He said the lockdown in itself was rational.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the regulations to ensure that the objectives are realized, some of them were contradictory and invalid.
Professor Lesiba Teffo, thanks as always for your time here on the AM Report, unpacking some of the big stories for us from this week.